AMC is it's like a room we all came into and met each other, but there's something bigger to me that's happening, and it's about sort of community mindset and supporting each other and education. I'm not allowing someone else to control me emotionally, and I'm not allowing someone else to control like my sort of rational decisions too. I'm going to pause, I'm going to think about it, I'm going to digest this.
And we are live with Stockretail or Retail Stock on Twitter. For anyone that does not know, this is, in my opinion, the #1 Twitter account for AMC information. It is just a beautiful, beautiful way of getting information out to the public and helping fight FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Professional and just a really, really good guy. I've been able to talk a little bit over the last couple months, and I'm very excited for doing this. And Retail Stock, thank you for hopping on.
Thanks for having me. I guess people just call me Retail if you want. But yeah, and I don't know about #1, but that was really nice of you to say. Thank you.
This is really where I get my information. Your YouTube especially is incredible. Whenever I used to be very, very hands-on in AMC DD. I'd say, dang, for over a year, I was pretty hands-on before I started this podcast, and now it's taking so much of my free time. And I still have an AMC group chat with some friends, like 10 of us. And I was the guy.
Well, aren't you a CPA or an accountant or something?
I'm a CPA.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, so you've got your own skill set for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely able to understand the financial statements. Actually, the other day, my roommate I'm living with, he was talking to me about his company, and it's like they're laying a bunch of people off, and he's an account executive sales guy, and they got rid of their account managers. And I was like, dude, it sounds like your company's going under. Can I see the financial statements?
Yeah.
And we gathered what we could, and I took a look at them, and I really need to see the cash flow, the cash statement. But without that, I couldn't really tell too much into what the company was doing, but it didn't look great. So yeah, I do have that skill set, but the investing game is completely different. I mean, I can definitely still look into the quarterly financial statements when they come out and everything, and have an idea of what's trending, what direction, which is part of what I did in that group chat. But now I've been so busy, I don't really text as much in it. And with the last quarterly statement that came out, I was like kind of gathering research, and then I just went to your YouTube, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna send this in the group chat because this does better than I can do anyway.
Well, that's nice of it. But you also know, because I think you and I have even talked a little bit in DMs and stuff. I do say don't just trust me either, though. So I love that you're digging in and sharing things, but I'm also, I mean, that's why I'm saying, hey, you've got your own skills. I know that you could definitely pick this apart as well. And so if I can be a jumping off point, that's great. But definitely I love that people kind of dive in themselves too.
Yeah, one of the conversations I had about this topic, I can't remember if it was Joel or Jay. Maybe I had it with everyone in the AMC community that I've talked to. But it is kind of the incredible power of Reddit and Twitter and YouTube is that there's millions of people in this play.
Yeah.
And it's not just people my age or people younger than me, the Gen Z. It's all over the board, and it's all kind of professionals in all sorts of walks of life. And we're all bringing these different skill sets to the play, and the amount of due diligence that we can provide together is just incredible. You can't match it with.
Totally. I had an experience. Well, first off, as far as like different people, you're absolutely right. Like here, I'm going to guess you're kind of in your mid-20s or something. If I got that wrong, just correct me. But
yeah, no, mid-20s, yeah.
Here I am in my mid-40s, and I've got a 17-year-old as my oldest kid. I've kind of raised a family and worked in corporate America for I'm in my third decade. And here we are both, working on the same thing together. But that's what's great about AMC too, right? Like, and I don't think any of us, or at least a lot of us, are not acting like we're different in this play. We're just working together at the same thing. So I love that. And then your point about there being millions, I really felt that a few months back when I did start the YouTube. A few new people kind of noticed me who I guess, I hadn't noticed before. And I started realizing, first I realized that YouTube itself, there's people who are only on YouTube versus I've really been, I call myself a Twitter ape, really. I've been on this journey in AMC for, since January 21, like since the beginning. I even had some stock in it in December of 2020, and I literally didn't even know what a squeeze was then. So like I kind of stumbled into this play, but I guess we can cover that in a minute. But the point was, a few months ago, somebody had noticed me and kind of asked me to kind of guest on their Telegram channel. And so I did that, and I wasn't even on Telegram. And then I saw that their channel had like 90,000 people or something. And here's a bunch of people only on Telegram. I was meeting people who are only on YouTube. I know now of people who are only on Facebook or only on Reddit. I've basically in the past been only on Twitter. Then like my mom is even in this place. She owns AMC, or my brother-in-law and a few of my kind of best buddies, IRL sort of, I'm using air
Yeah.
quotes here. Well, some of them are not even on social media for AMC. Like nobody would even know them. And yet they've held their shares this whole journey. And so we are definitely millions and all over the place. And it's just cool when I step back and I go outside of my circle in Twitter and feeling like that's already big and there's a lot of us there, but to realize actually that's one tiny slice of the whole AMC community.
Yeah, it is very cool. It's a very cool thing to step back and think about and realize that, honestly, I didn't even think about Facebook. I didn't think about all the social media outlets. I kind of thought about, in my mind, the big three of
Yeah.
Reddit, Twitter, and YouTube. So there was a book called The Antisocial Network,
Mm,
which I thought did a pretty good job. It was definitely an outsider's perspective. And they definitely wrote it. This is kind of my concern for everything that I see, other than the Apes Together Strong doc. That one's I have no concerns about. I'm very excited for. But all the outsiders, they
mm,
write these books, or they're going to make these movies as if the moment already happened and now it's over.
yeah.
And in my mind, it's all just a prequel, everything that was in that book. But that's kind of like, just kind of judge off that book and judge off my own research. Really did start on Reddit, and then there seemed to be, as I've gone down this podcast route, there seems to be almost an alliance isn't the correct word, but a correlation of people that use Twitter will use YouTube, use YouTube will use Twitter as their second go-to source, and then people that use Instagram, they're not really on Twitter as much, and I'm kind of realizing this just through my own lens of I have a super varied background. I mentioned the CPA. I've worked in sales, and I'm in sales now as a business development manager, and I've done finance. I've done some M&A work and valuation and all this stuff, but I've never done marketing. This is my first time in the marketing world,
Okay.
and it's something I've realized is that like these echo chambers
Hmm.
of the different social media sites. And like you said, like you are, I'd say one of the, at least on Twitter, one of the bigger, more respected names, and you, as you deserve to be inside the AMC community. But it is funny that I'm sure people on the apes on Facebook or whatever it is, some social media that just have never even heard of you, or maybe haven't heard
That's
of
exactly
Jay.
it.
Or, yeah,
And
it's
in a way,
wild.
I'm actually saying that's a great thing, because it just, if we really are that distributed and that diverse of a network, there's actually a lot of strength in that. And you can see it in our staying power. I mean, here we are 2.5 years later, and I listened to that. It was the court call, this current court case going on.
Mhm.
Gosh, I don't know, maybe early April. I don't quite remember when it was, maybe even the beginning of May here. There was the conference call, and I listened, and that's when AMC's lawyers talked about there being 3.8 million shareholders. And, it was, I want to say March or so of 2021 when I remember him talking about the same number. Like at one point, I
Mhm.
think we all talked about 4 million, but I mean, if we're 2.5 years in and we're still 3.8 million, that's a lot of people who decided to stay around it. But,
A
don't get me
ton.
wrong. You and I both know numbers. And so I know there's some ins and outs to that number. If some people left and some people came in, that's like a net zero or whatever. But the point is, there's still an awful lot of us. And if there's some out there who don't know me, that to me is encouraging, because me, or in the past, let's say, people like Trey or some other, just think of the really big names. And I don't suggest that I'm as big as those names. But what I mean is, there have been people who've left over time, and here we still are. And the point is, this is, to me, a movement. It's about something a lot bigger than any one of us. And to your point about maybe those books kind of having it wrong about the moment, for me, yes, we're in AMC, but AMC was just a funny, I don't know, coincidence or happenstance of how we coalesce together, a lot of us.
Yes.
But what it is to me is, we're educating each other, we're supporting each other. Like, I'm not always just talking AMC with these people. I'm hearing about people's lives. Someone's dog got sick and died or whatever, and okay, we reach out and put our arms around them. Someone else, gets to celebrate getting a promotion or something, and we're celebrating for them. Someone wants to learn about how to read a balance sheet. You were talking about looking at those numbers. All right, hit me up. I'll kind of show you this. Or like I've thought about for a while, making videos that'll be boring as heck to some people, but other people will go, hey, this is free education this guy's given me. He's teaching me how to read these numbers, and now I can learn. And so, that's stuff they didn't get to learn in high school or whatever, because they're not teaching that. But here we are teaching each other. Well, nothing I just said has to be tied to AMC. AMC is it's like a room we all came into and met each other, but there's something bigger to me that's happening, and it's about sort of community mindset and supporting each other and education and I don't know, lifting each other up. And so I don't know, there's something really neat about it to me, and I think you're right that it's not something that's done yet, and it's something actually still in progress, and I don't think I know the end of it either.
Yeah, there's a couple things I want to touch on there. First off, yeah, the end of it is just God knows, and like you can look at, even let's say, as I've talked to people that are big in TA in this play, and that's one of the things I've really learned a ton about over the last couple of
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, same.
And I've gotten a lot better at. I'm not the best day trader. I don't really have time these days, but when I did have time, I wasn't the best day trader. But swing trading, when I'm able to like, hey,
Yeah.
we're going to go for a couple weeks here, or whatever, it seems to be a lot easier from just all the information, education I've gotten over the last year or two. And talking to those people, a lot of them do say, sometime in 2024 looks incredible and whatever, XYZ times. And let's say one of them are right that AMC squeezes in 2024, 2025. Well, even that might not mark the end. I mean, I don't know why it would mark the end of what this is. Apes have a lot of different meanings, all people equal. And the fact that they call us dumb money or dumb as apes and all of those things. Well, in my mind, that's all true, but it's also those bears and those bulls who will play the stock market a certain way. And now there's apes where you can play the stock market a certain way if you know there's going to be a community of people that are going to gravitate to whatever stock it may be. I don't know why it would dissipate after AMC. I mean, that's definitely where the biggest crowd came into, but I'm not sure this type of movement and fight and investment strategy will ever truly go away. Maybe it will. Maybe it's just a one-time black swan event, but who knows? And then I also want to touch on the point that you made about Trey. Well, the fact that you brought Trey up is kind of a funny one. So when I first got into this play, very fortuitous timing, was like we were at 12 right before we went to 70, and I was learning a lot from Trey. And one of my buddies got in it with me, and we were talking about like, well, what could go wrong? What could go wrong? And this is really when I was back in it just for the squeeze. Like that was the only reason I was in it. And then before I decided I was going to stay for this war, and our buddy said, "Well, what if Trey dies? Like, God forbid, what if he leaves the movement?" Because at the time, just got into this. I didn't fully understand what was happening, and it looked like that was the leader before I'd be on Twitter a lot and see we have no leaders and all this things. And I was like, oh, that's a good point. Like, what if something does happen to Trey or Trey leaves the movement or whatever? And then, you fast forward and it doesn't matter. There is no leader, which is a huge deal because Robert Greene, like my favorite author, in 48 Laws of Power, one of his laws was kill the shepherd and the sheep will scatter.
Mm-hmm.
And he uses
it's
all
like
of his
the head
writings.
of the snake type of thing too.
And all of his writings, he'll use real life examples, and he's an incredible author that I really enjoy reading. And well, Trey went away, and all these other names that you can think of will come in and out, and people will give what they can to this movement and to this play, and it seems to be that there really are no leaders. It's just you give what you can, you do what you can, and there's a willingness to help here and a willingness to do what you can.
Yeah, I agree. And let's talk about that for a minute because I have been in this play so long, and for some reason, in certain moments, I don't know why, it's just been such a weird journey. There's times I've been thrown into, like, say, group DMs, for example, and you can think of some of the biggest Twitter accounts that were out there for AMC, and for some reason, I got put in some of those DMs, and I'm like, why am I in this thing? And the early days were just chaos too, like people just arguing and just F-bombing each other. Like you should have seen some of these group chats. It was intense. It was very intense. And I think we were all, it's like the kind of sociology idea of group dynamics, like the storming, norming, performing, that kind of, I don't know if you've ever seen that sort of the life cycle of groups. Well, we were definitely in the storming stage, people just fighting and arguing and blocking each other, and unblocking each other. It was pretty funny to watch. Well, funny in hindsight. And at the time, it was, a lot of drama. But here's the thing, like through that process, to your point, I would say there's been several types of so-called leaders, or let's say celebrity apes. One has been the type who, for whatever reason, either, you mentioned we ran to 70. I'm sure there are people who cashed out. I mean, it's life.
Mhm.
People did that. I happened to stick around, and even I would say in hindsight, like, well, shoot, I could have a lot more money right now if I'd made some different decisions. But to me, there were some bigger things in this play. That's kind of a side topic, I guess. But so there's people who kind of probably left, and at least some of them probably left kind of quietly. And that was always an idea too. Like, you don't have to declare that you're leaving, because there's some of us who believe in kind of holding and really making the shorts cover. Maybe don't take people out the door with you, was kind of, that's one. So that there's some of those.
Mhm.
Then there's some who life happens, either they just mentally got fatigued, emotionally got fatigued. I know one large account who some family members had some really intense health issues, so they just kind of stepped back. So there's some people who just kind of life happens and they've stepped back. And then there's others who, and I'm not going to name names here because I'm not about drama or anything, but
Mhm.
there were, especially around the time Ape got created, we saw a lot of, in particular, YouTube accounts suddenly flip and go negative. And those I question a lot more. Like, I guess the point is, and I even made a video at one point about the idea of an influencer. And that's why I always say, don't trust me too. Like, if anybody was to watch my YouTube, I know you mentioned you do. I mean, the amount of times I've said, don't trust me, bro. Like, no trust me, bros here. And what I'm actually doing is I'm trying to help anybody I can build a muscle of, okay, I might listen to someone for nuggets of information, possibly wisdom, just data points, but I still need to make my own decisions and own my own decisions. And I'm not going to let someone else do that for me, because the moment we get into someone else is making my decisions, especially financially, I think you're setting yourself up for being manipulated. And I do believe that this thing is big enough that there are people who are paid. And so if someone can be a paid influencer, I said in one video that basically if I was, let's say, one of the so-called bad guys, I maybe would pay influencers to get to your mind and your heart so I could get to your wallet. And so I'm a voice in this movement who says, actually, don't just lean on influencers. And so to your point, there's been enough people who perhaps it was painful when some of these people left. And it was painful for me. There's some people who, even if I wasn't close to, I didn't like that they left. It was a bummer. It was sad. But, if you believe in something big enough, then it's bigger than any one person. That's really my point too. Like, I didn't make it for me about pick your big account. And so if they left, for me, I was still here because it was about things that were a lot bigger than that. So I don't know. That was a bit of a ramble, I guess. But I just think that's an important point you brought up, and something that I talk a lot about, whether that's in life even or in AMC, like just this idea of I'm not allowing someone else to control me emotionally, and I'm not allowing someone else to control like my sort of rational decisions too. I'm going to pause. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to digest this. And I think that's what makes us immune too to being lied to. And, there's a lot of us who believe, let's say even outside of AMC, that there are half truths and mistruths that we get fed out in the world. And it's good to be able to have some critical thinking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. First off, we're here for the rambles. We're here for those.
Okay.
It's a
I'll just trust
podcast,
you.
you know.
Maybe you'll be able
I
to
love
edit
it.
some of this. I don't know.
we,
Or
we
just
can't,
people can
but no,
listen
that
to
was
the rambles.
that was a great ramble. That's what we're here for. Is those
I think actually
I love the podcast platform,
could I riff
honestly,
on
for that
that for one
reason.
more second? Sorry to
Please go.
interrupt you.
Please, no, please do.
And maybe this will tell you a bit about like really inside who I am. I have this like sense of justice, and I really I hate when people are lied to, and I hate when people are misled. It really bothers me. And so my desire for people, and so sometimes I'll even like, if you were to go back over my Twitter receipts, like I said, there's 2.5 year trail there. You might find times where all of a sudden I'm talking about a theme, and you'll be like, huh, he kind of tweeted about this for like 2 or 3 weeks or something. For example, there was a really big account, like really big, who was very toxic, was an online bully, was very terrible to a lot of people, but yet was somehow held up as kind of this leader in the AMC community. And so if you were to go back, you'd see like over time, I started talking about concepts, like the concept of dealing with toxic people and whether someone is actually trustworthy. And I kind of set that up for a while. I already forgot where I was going with this, speaking of rambling. But I guess the point is, oh, I know what it was. My heart is for people to not be misled and to start to be able to kind of choose positivity, which is why actually I even agreed to do your pod, by the way. I love the concept you have of like, let me highlight some positive people out there. I think that's a really cool journey you've embarked on, whether through, and I know you're kind of even branching out beyond AMC, just finding positive people out there doing stuff in the world. I think that's a really neat thing that you've thought about, because that's part of my point too. There's something going on. I guess I'm getting a little philosophical here. So you or
I
anybody
love it.
listening is
I love
welcome
it.
to disagree. But so here's my point of view. There's something going on in our culture where we keep propping up all these negative people and we keep following all these in, like bullies are grabbing the microphone and the spotlight. And I think, I don't know, if it's just the world is big and crazy and weird. And so if someone's really strong, we want to follow them. And so that somehow ends up elevating bullies because they look really strong. And I want to be a different kind of voice that's more like, no, let me invite you along. Let me encourage you and nurture you and show you how to maybe not follow bullies and even how to push back. Like one thing I've said recently is don't give up your voice. Like there's people out there trying to discourage us from talking, trying to discourage us from being loud and vocal. And I'm like, no, I'm never going to shut up. I'm going to share my voice and I'm going to actually encourage other people to share theirs. So I don't know, that's just something too. And why I'm kind of harping on this idea of, and I'm really glad you brought it up, of kind of not having leaders. It's great if someone, maybe you respect someone or they have credibility or whatever, and you want to listen to them, or they're just fun and entertaining. Like some of AMC is just entertainment too. There's been
Hmm.
some fun in the journey. And so I don't begrudge anybody for really liking listening to certain people. That's cool, but that's different than following them as an influencer and letting them direct your life.
No, absolutely. And there's so much I want to touch on there. First off, I just want to give a shout out to actually because he popped in my head when you just said just fun and entertaining and just really like to listen to. Greg from Ape Radio. I like the Ape Radio crew a lot. I don't spend a lot of time at all listening to Twitter Spaces. And I wish I did. That's really how you grow Twitter. Is what I've learned is that you need to hop in Twitter Spaces and talk a bunch. But he just has this incredible radio voice, and he's a really smart guy. And and they don't really talk a lot of numbers and they're not going over the financial statements in Ape Radio, but it's definitely an entertaining thing. And there's a lot of spaces like this where it's just, you can have it on in the background, it's radio and you can have it on the background and just kind of listen to this crew of people kind of shoot the shit. And it's a really cool little part of this whole community. And it's not just AMC. I mean, it's definitely, there's different Twitter communities. The financial world is where I spend a lot of time, but there's different crypto communities. There was some Doge people I've had on, and I got to learn more about their community. It's very similar and very cool in that way. But
Yeah, I've noticed that.
also,
You're right.
yeah,
There's all these different communities. It's pretty cool that's. I think we're just kind of in, I don't know, chapter one of what that looks like in terms of financial communities really coming together in real time.
yes,
There'd be chat boards and things back even as far as the 90s or something. I told you I'm a little older than you, but this is something different, this real time concept of we could just kind of get on a call and chat with each other. And oh my gosh, did you see what Powell said today in his speech? Or hey, look at this stock that just popped, what's going on? And we can
mhm.
talk about it real time. So that is kind of cool. And you're right,
Yeah,
I
no,
love acknowledging there's a ton of different communities.
yeah, the internet's just getting started. My brother, he actually just went full time entrepreneur, which is very cool, full time self employed,
Wow.
and yeah, it was very exciting, and it's a fully like online business. It's a real estate business, but it's fully online. And I was talking to him literally like yesterday, and he was talking about how the internet's really just getting started. That all these small businesses. My grandfather owned a small business,
Yeah.
and it was kind of just like a run of the mill. Every kind of small time entrepreneur would have this small business, or a concept like what he was doing, and it's like now today we can all do the same thing, but it's just these online businesses. And don't get me wrong, it took him 4 or 5 years to go full time into it, and he's still obviously a little nervous, cutting off half of his income and all of that. But he was making a really good point that it's really like the internet is really just getting started, and it's only 20 some years old, and this version of it is only like 10 years old, maybe 15,
Mm.
there's so much room to expand in it. And so maybe this podcast one day I hope can fund itself, and I can further invest into it, and maybe one day that spits some money back towards me. Who knows? But it is an interesting concept. We could go down that rabbit hole for a while. But I want to rewind a little bit.
Sure.
And because you talked about following somebody who's maybe we just want to follow somebody who's strong, and you talked about like being able to stand up to toxic people, and in society, like it made me think of so many different things.
Yeah.
And and I think it's true, not to get super political, but you definitely see it in the political realm, and even on Twitter and on podcasts. There are these, for example, there are these like quote unquote red pill podcast, and there's like the Andrew Tates of the world, and there was this obviously some sort of void where young men needed some sort of leadership, and then this unfortunately toxic kind of being just filled that void. But something that I'm definitely an optimist, but something that I'm seeing happening in the culture is when that happened, whatever time period it started happening, there are definitely positive voices in there as well. It wasn't all just the Andrew Tate type character. There were other positive, good characters in that help filling that void. And now there seems to be that this red pill podcast and red pill like culture is collapsing on itself as people have learned to fight back, as a lot of it was misogyny that was happening. And now you're seeing women come on these podcasts that are, putting up a verbal fight, and it seems to all be collapsing on itself. And I think human nature, or just the human creature, has an ability to adapt, an ability to fight in that sense. And I'm definitely an optimist, but I am starting to see that turn, and I'm starting to see that we are able to learning again, at least in my generation, like we're learning against like, okay, we need to sometimes be a warrior, sometimes be a lion so you can be the lamb you really are. Because right now, I'd say the last 10 years, maybe 10 years ago, everyone in my generation, we were lambs, and we've had to learn how to become lions in that
There's so
sense.
much you're making me think about, and so thank you for sharing that. You're like triggering a lot of thoughts.
Shoot.
First, just for anyone listening, because I imagine there could be some who listen who just don't know me. So I do avoid getting political at all in the AMC movement because I do love. In fact, I'll go all the way back. If you were to look at my Twitter account, you'd see it starts February of 21, but I mentioned I was in AMC all the way back to December of 20. And in January, with the squeeze, kind of two things happened. Help me if I ramble here, bring me back to the point you were making around of, let's say, toxic culture and some things turning, because I want to get back to that. But I'm going to take kind of a circuitous route here. Yeah, so I had another account, and two things kind of happened. One is there was that run to about 19 in January of 21, and then a dip over time all the way back to, I don't know, kind of like 550-ish or something. Pre-split, right? So I'm talking pre-split numbers. And I mentioned I didn't really know what a squeeze was. I was learning real time. I was hearing about what's this thing. Actually, what happened is I was on vacation with my family in January. So I mentioned I was in before the squeeze. And 2 days in a row, my AMC stock doubled. I just had a little bit because I was in as a reopening play. It was just like a typical investing thesis. I was like, at some point, we're not going to be locked down anymore. People will go back to movies. This stock will go up. Like, it was literally as simple as that. So I just had a little bit of, tiny slice of my portfolio at that time. And I'm sitting by the pool with my family, and I'm like, why is my stock doubling? I could not find any news anywhere on any normal site. Like, you go to CNBC, you go to like through your Apple stock app, you look at MarketWatch, The Street, Market Beat, like nothing anywhere was showing me why AMC was up, even though it doubled 2 days in a row. And so that's when I went to Twitter, and I was like, and so that's when I was finding out, oh my gosh, you can actually, so this shows how kind of uninformed I was at the time. You can, find all this information about your stock on Twitter. And I was like, whoa, everybody's talking about this. And then I knew what was happening all of a sudden. And so I think that's an interesting lesson in and of itself. Someone like me who'd been in the system, I'd worked at this Dow Jones company. And when I say that for your listeners, just means, there's the Dow Jones index, the kind of big 30 companies. So I was at one of those for 21 years. And so here I was, no media anywhere in terms of, let's say, normal old school media was talking about a stock that had doubled 2 days in a row. Could not find it. But here all over Twitter, everyone's telling me what's actually happening. And so that was a big aha for me right there of like, there's a whole other world of information that I'm not being fed. Something's not right here. And, fast forward, and I've now learned that a lot of those media companies, I don't know if your listeners will know this, are actually owned by hedge funds. If you go to Seeking Alpha, you go to Motley Fool, you go to The Street, Market Watch, Market Beat, these dig through who owns them. The people trying to make money off of us are also the people feeding us financial information. It's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's a whole other topic for either another day or another part of this pod. And so what happened too is that original Twitter account I had been more political myself. That's what we've all gone through in this country. Like we've kind of been, put into our two herds, right? You're either red or you're blue, and then you fight. And so I saw this thing going on in the AMC community. It was like, actually, we're not talking about red and blue, and we're not talking about race and religion and all this stuff. We're saying, hey, let's call it even financial oppression. Like there are people at the top who are controlling the system in a way that's going to make them win every time, and using improper, fraudulent means and manipulation and every trick in the tool bag to make sure that we don't take any of their money, and in fact they take some of ours. I believe that now. I mean, this journey has brought me to that place. And like I said, I came from the system. When I say this, I didn't work in finance or anything like that, but anyway, so what happened is, as I realized this opportunity for unity around something that we could at least agree on, like, hey, it's not right that there are people cheating to take money from people who need the money. Something's wrong with that in our system. And so I deleted that Twitter account and I started this one. And at the time I just was like, oh, this is just a movement of retail. And so that's literally just, I was like, all right, I'm talking about stocks and I'm, in this retail movement. So I named my Twitter account Retail Stock. And then over time, people, actually just called me Retail because I never shared my real name out there. So that was kind of how that started. I'm trying to remember. So you were kind of talking about this
toxicity.
thing.
You wanted to, yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Oh, I know what the other thought you were triggering for me is something that I like to say. And something else I've learned through this journey is, one, I'm nice. I'm not soft. Nice and soft they don't have to be the same thing. Right. And so, but that connects to this lesson I've learned through the journey, which is, as I fought against, there've been a lot of times through this, and I think some people don't realize, if you are at all a larger account or an account that, let's say, gains some traction and people might listen to, you get attacked pretty hard. People will come into my DMs, or people will comment on things on my feed. People will pretend to be friends and then flip on you. There's just all kinds of psychological manipulation that will happen to you. And as you fight that, here I am 2.5 years into that. There have been moments where, I could almost lose who I am and just get into the fighting and the anger and the rage and kind of, I don't know. It's good to push back on bullies, but it's also, you got to be careful that you don't kind of become what you're fighting and you don't lose the core of who you are in this process. And I would say that to anybody who's out there getting engaged in the AMC community. There'll be negativity that tries to come around you and sort of swarm you and bury you in it. And so for me, it was like I had to keep several things as my kind of grounding. One is that idea of, okay, I'm nice, but I'm not soft. So if you're going to lie to me or you're going to lie to people around me, you're going to hear from me. I don't mind pushing back on bullies. On the other hand, I do believe in positivity, that, if I got real, I don't know, almost, let's say, religious or philosophical or whatever you want to call it, I believe that light will beat darkness every time. Like there's another thing I like to say, which is, say you go into this pitch black room, no windows, and you hate the darkness, and you could stand there screaming at the darkness and raging against it, or you can flip on a light switch. One of those two things actually solve the problem. And so to me, that's just a reminder, like, if I want some change in the world, then I need to sort of, gosh, it's such a cliche, but be that change, like be positive, lift other people up, educate, inform, care about what's going on with people. That was a whole journey for me during COVID too, by the way. Like I was so angry at a lot of things that were going on that I felt like were wrong culturally. And you kind of realize it's this huge world, and like, you got to have some humility to go, I can't control the whole world or change the whole world. What a silly idea. Like, I'm one out of 7 or 8 billion people, but I can make a difference in smaller circles around me. Like, there's a mom who needs some time because she's a single mom, and so maybe we can help watch her kids and give her some rest. When I was a kid, I have this simple story. Like, I didn't even have pajamas, and someone bought me a pair of pajamas, and like, I still remember it to this day. It like changed my life and fostered this spirit of generosity in me, of giving to others. So there's just like tiny little things we can do that actually start spreading light in our communities. And I believe that has ripple effects. And so to your point about like we can fight that toxicity, and sometimes it's worth it. Like sometimes you've got to call it out. There's been times in this AMC journey in particular that I've seen some people intentionally trying to hurt other people, either mentally or even financially or whatever. And so I'll go at that pretty hard. But there's also like this effectiveness of actually just, I don't know, being about a mission. And for me, that mission is positivity and light and whatever. And I don't want to let someone else draw me off of that mission, if that could make sense.
That makes sense. That makes
There was a
sense.
heck of a ramble. I don't know.
No, I
Touched
love
on
it. It's
probably 8
also
topics in that.
no, I love it. That's again the podcast platform is part of the reason that I love this is that before the internet and before podcast became a thing, this just you weren't able to do that. You weren't able to have these long form conversations. It was
Mm,
oh, we have 15 minutes with this person on whatever network it is, and
yeah, yeah.
you're gonna ask a question, you're gonna get 30 seconds to answer. And the truth is, you just can't learn that way. You can't discuss that way. It's not a real conversation. And what I like to tell people before we ever hit record on these podcasts is, hey, it's a conversation that we met at the airport at a bar. We're
Mm,
sitting down for a coffee or a beer, and
yeah.
we're just gonna talk, and we're just gonna. It's more me getting to know you, but we're gonna get to know each other,
And people get
and
to listen in. Yeah, I like that.
people get to listen in, and it's a beautiful platform. It really is, and
Well,
I'm happy
so I'm
that
remembering, speaking of
yeah.
getting to know, so sorry for interrupting. I'm
No,
remembering
please
something
go.
else that you were triggering another thought there, which was there's like a test for me too, of whether I would listen to a leader. And you were kind of describing some leaders who, for me, would kind of maybe fail that test. And this doesn't have to be political. It can be about anybody on any position, let's say. And it's like, can their message be global enough? And what I mean by that is like, if their message is harmful to anyone, then something is wrong with that message and I need to test that. So if their message is, let's say, I don't know, harmful to women, or it's wouldn't fly in a certain culture, like you couldn't share that message in Japan the same way you could in Mexico or something. I don't know. Like this idea, and I guess I want to be careful because someone might think I'm some kind of globalist. I'm not at all. Like there's the whole WEF and globalism and all that. That's a whole other topic I'm not meaning to
Yeah,
touch on. But I'm just talking about, can I treat every human with respect and dignity? And can I honor that person for who they are? And if a message can't honor all people and doesn't treat some people with dignity and respect and honor, then there's something wrong with that message. And so, if a leader has the humility to hear back, hey, your message would be harmful to X, Y, or Z person, then great. That's someone actually who, because people can be flawed, right? I'm flawed. You're flawed. Everyone is.
of course, yeah.
So I'm not looking for a perfect leader, but I am looking for someone who can maybe check and adjust and go, oh, I didn't realize, maybe what I'm sharing out to the world is harmful to this group. Let me think that through and revise my message. And so that's one test. The other thing, you were reminding me this idea, it's such a simple thing, but like I used it to teach my kids, this idea of integrity. And so like, have you ever had like those packages? It's like I don't know if it's like been kind of almost sealed with heat or whatever. It's like this plastic and you just can't rip the darn thing no matter what you do. Like crazy hard to rip that stuff. But if you took like a pair of nail clippers and you just made one tiny little, like just, you can imagine how thin a nail clipper would cut something, one tiny little rip in that plastic. Now you can rip open the entire thing and tear the whole thing apart. And so for me, if a leader, let's say, has a character flaw, like, and I'm talking a significant, not just like, oh, they get a little grumpy here and there, or I don't know what, they like to smoke cigars or something, like that's
Yeah.
whatever. People have their own little quirks and stuff, but I'm talking about a real character flaw, something that's like, okay, there's a problem here. That to me is that little rip in the package that you could then tear the whole thing apart. And so to me, if someone kind of doesn't have integrity and can't, I don't know, be the right kind of person in all areas, I start to really pause and go, if I see that problem on the surface, what else is under the surface that I don't yet know that they're hiding, and how's that going to come out in their leadership? And so I think that was a little cryptic. I guess I'm saying, if you're highlighting people who you feel you've seen maybe, let's say, mistreat people, like that's a pretty big character flaw, or maybe, hey, they said this thing that actually isn't true. What's going on here? If you see a little rip in the package, sometimes you got to be careful because I don't know, a small issue with integrity can be a big issue. And actually,
That
so
makes
that's
sense.
why if you look on my Twitter, one thing I've said, and this goes all the way back even to your discussion on kind of who's stuck around, who's here, consistency over time is something I look for. And that's not just AMC, that's just anything. Because people can present to you who they want you to think they are. But if you're around someone long enough or you follow someone long enough, eventually whoever they are on the inside is going to come out on the outside. You're going to see, there's like this saying, like, out of the mouth, the heart speaks. Like, it's going to come out.
Mm.
And so for me, that's the point too. It's consistency over time. And I ask people to measure me by that. Like, I'm not going to say anything that I don't hold myself to. So, but because I know who I am and I know I'm actually showing you the real me, whether that's on Twitter or YouTube or whatever, that's why I'm very comfortable saying, hey, watch for consistency over time. And if you don't see that from me, then you can judge me, but also hold other people to that. And so if you see someone who one day is all about the stock and the next day they say all these like really kind of either negative or doubtful things, then you start to go, oh, that might actually be someone who's being used to influence my sentiment. Because that's a whole other conversation you might research, or your listeners might research, is this notion of social sentiment driving stock movement. It's a real thing. And so that's just another reason, like, you know, like on these space calls you referenced, or on YouTube or on Twitter, just anywhere, I'm watching for consistency of behavior, and I'm watching for patterns of someone slipping in negativity or doubt. You know, you talked about fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Like, there are absolutely people out there on the internet whose job is to influence social sentiment. And so, yeah, to me, consistency over time is something else that matters.
Yeah, no, for me, it's kind of funny actually. So that last sentence there are definitely people who are paid to influence social sentiment, and unfortunately, a lot of those people are working in financial media. I think those financial media sites, as you mentioned, they're just big propaganda sites in the same way that political media sites are also propaganda sites, unfortunately. But there's but to combat that, and to get back to your point of a leader and integrity, something that I look for in the people that I've had on this podcast, that like the dots I can connect, the similarities I connect between all of you, and I really respect. There is that sense of don't trust me, bro. Like that's there with everybody. Jay popped my head back at the beginning of this conversation when you were talking about don't trust me. Like, use this information whichever way you want. And then Stately News is someone who I just posted last week. Really smart guy, Tony, who's the founder there. And Stately News, at the end of all of his clips he'll share, he says, we're not here to tell you what to think. We're here to present the information, and we're trying to create the demand for this. We think it's there. We think that if people were able to find someone supplying that kind of information, just information, try and be free of bias, we think if we can provide that supply, the demand will appear because it is there. And I like what he's going about. And Rip Views does the same thing, where he'll find the biggest bias. His bias is towards bias in the news, and he'll try and find the biggest bias on the right and the left. And the integrity factor is something that pops up with every conversation with all of you. And
well, or here's an example. Like, so, okay, what does integrity look like? It might not even be the lack of bias. Like, I've even said on a few videos, for example, back when we were, talking about the vote for AMC. So I don't know if all your listeners are necessarily AMC. So if some aren't, there was a big vote, and we kind of learned about it sort of even all the way back in the holiday period, kind of November, December. And so sorry, an alarm was going off because I may have to text my son here and help him get up here in a minute. But anyway, so there's this big vote, and I was talking about sort of pros and cons of kind of a yes versus a no vote. And I had to say on my videos, like, listen, I have bias myself. I am biased towards, in that time period, it was a yes vote. But I tried to present enough information, like, okay, if you disagree with me, at least one, I'll treat you with respect, and two, here's the information, so you can try to decide why you're that no vote, why you disagree with me, etc. And so I think that's one thing I feel is important, whether it's political news, financial news, just, I don't know, social, cultural news, whatever it is. Everyone has a bias. We all have a point of view. And so the trick is knowing what someone's bias is, and do they have enough integrity to own that, right? Like, I own the fact that I'm long on AMC. I want AMC to win. I still believe in a squeeze. I want a squeeze to happen. And I want to stop what I believe is stock manipulation by the shorts. Well, that's a pretty strong bias. And so anybody listening to me has to know that about me, and to know that no matter how hard I try to be objective, and that's the integrity piece, that bias is just going to come through. It's just human behavior. Like I can't completely get rid of it. So I like that you're kind of saying maybe there's a site. I don't know that site you were talking about, but perhaps they're attempting to be as objective as they can and to acknowledge
Mhm.
bias. I like that.
Yes, that's one of the things that Rip Views, Joe Rippert is the guy, the founder of that. One of the things that we talked about actually was everyone has a bias,
Right.
and it's important. It's well, for me, one of the things that I need to hear you say that for me to trust you. And then again, like keeping on the topic of leadership and integrity and people not even necessarily to follow, but to respect their opinions. And for me, you are definitely one of those people and one of those accounts. And there are these reoccurring themes. Once again, I know I just touched on it, but there are all these reoccurring themes of, no, I have a bias. That's one of the things that they will admit, and the don't trust me, bro. That the don't trust me, and do your own research. There are cliches and sayings that you need to hear from people, and you won't hear those from so many people that for me
Mm.
those are big red flags and big green flags that you can see. And if you, to the point of consistency, like you need to be consistent with yourself, but also when you're looking for sources of information, whether it's an AMC or with your what in any community or any source of news that you're looking for, there are sources of information that it's consistent across all those different realms that you want to see and you need to see for you to take that source seriously. And yeah, the integrity piece is huge. And integrity can mean a lot of different things, but the more you do, and the more I do this podcast, even like I I can immediately tell like, oh yeah, this is within 20 minutes, this is somebody that you can trust. And this is somebody that is trying to live up to integrity and ideals. And we're all human, like you said. We all make mistakes and none of us are perfect, but it's a super interesting thing when you start to look at it from a macro. And I am starting to touch on different
Well, I mean, so think about this,
realms.
like,
Yeah.
like if you were a detective or you were, say, an attorney and you were, trying to explore, did someone commit a crime? Like there's this idea of means, motive, and opportunity. And so does someone have the means, the ability to do something? Does someone have the motive? Like, could they benefit from this? And did they have the opportunity to go do so? So now let's think about that in the realm of like everything going on in our culture around us. There is perhaps more power in the United States than anywhere else in the world, or at least we can agree there's a ton of power at the top. So there's certainly, and money too. I'm talking power and money.
Yes.
So there's your motive, right? People like power and people like money, and people who have power and money do not like to lose it. So boom,
Mhm.
that's a pretty big motive. Okay, what are the means? Well, I can reach viewers through, let's say, classic media or now on social media and share a message. And then what's the opportunity? Like, I mean, I guess I've kind of described that means and that opportunity are kind of coming together. The opportunity is like, let's think about the sort of Atlas Trading Group, right? The kind of, alleged stock
Mhm.
pumpers. I'll say alleged
Mhm.
because we're here talking publicly. I suppose my bias is I believe that, yes, they are stock pumpers. And so here was the means, social media, to say, get in this stock, bro. This thing is going to move and fly and rip and whatever. The motive, I can make a ton of money if I get you to do what I want you to do in the right timing. And then the opportunity of like they're getting in the stock before they've told you about it and they're getting out of it before they tell you. And so here, people are getting abused by
Mhm.
these stock pumpers. Well, same thing, whether it's politics or, I talked earlier about all these arms of hedge funds, that are representing themselves as media groups. And so to your point, I love that you said red flags. Like it's good to just know what are those flags that something, even sometimes in my gut, like I think some of us can learn to just trust something doesn't feel right, something smells funny. And so I need to pause and be careful about what voice I'm listening to because there's a lot of power and a lot of money that would like to manipulate me and that is not interested in telling me what's really happening.
No, definitely, definitely. I also, I mean, the people at the top in this one particular case is who we're fighting, but there's also scammers out there who,
Yeah, yeah,
within
that's
the
my point.
crypto, within the whole crypto world, yeah. Like, so there's people. I talked to Jordan. He's a trader. He's a day trader, and we talked about there are all these people who like pump these penny stocks or pump these penny cryptos,
Hmm.
and they made a ton of money that way, doing exactly what you said because with social media, there's this amazing opportunity. I kind of will go two ways with this. There's amazing opportunity, but there's also amazing amount of danger where anyone can now go in and kind of be a con artist on here. But also, just the positive of that is, well, anyone can come here and spread good information, and like traditional media is dying in a sense. The fact that 2 years ago I was looking at Motley Fool and all of these sites as if they weren't biased, and hell, 8 years ago I was looking at CNN and maybe not Fox News because I was a kid and I watched Family Guy because kids watch Family Guy, and
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
oh, and I knew, oh yeah, Fox News
That's
is
one of
biased.
my little guilty pleasures too. Simpsons and Family Guy, I love them both.
Yeah. I still love South Park, actually. I think the satire that South Park does, beyond the comedy, I think
For some reason,
their
I never got
social
into South Park,
commentary.
but man,
Oh,
Family Guy,
really?
oh man, I giggle at that way more than I should.
I love the social commentary of it.
Yeah.
I think it's funny. I watched an episode and I like was talking to a friend, and like it's crazy to me that the smartest people on television are these 10-year-old animated children. It's just wild. But yeah, like 8 years ago, I wouldn't have guessed that, oh, CNN, MSNBC, or just all everything, Fox and everything is just like so, they're pushing an agenda and they're all extremely biased like that. And out of nowhere, really out of nowhere, with social media, there's now independent media. There's independent sources of information such as yourself. And when you're able to find these people who have 1,000, 10,000, 50,000 followers, and all of these different voices are able to be a part of the conversation, it's really incredible what we're seeing happen, that it's taking down traditional media, and the individual was the solution to that. The individual at scale, the individual,
Mm,
with all
that's
of
an
us.
interesting phrase. I
Uh,
like that. The individual at scale.
yeah, the individual at scale. Yeah, that's the solution. And it's really cool to see that this is happening. And yeah, no, it's just incredible, and it's
Well,
just
it's a
such
double-edged
a
sword,
learning
right?
process.
And by that
Yes,
I mean
yeah,
it can cut both ways. So
yes,
on the one hand, you're like, oh, hey, this person has 50,000 followers. There's some credibility or something. But on the other hand, there are people with lots of followers who are not credible. And so
hmm
it's, I don't know. I just keep coming back to, and maybe we've hit the point enough, but like that idea you said of flags and kind of just seeing, and I've talked a lot about it lately too. There's even an account I've kind of highlighted that is very big, who has gotten quite a few things wrong. And so I'm like, well, why are people following this account if they're consistently wrong? Like, let's
hmm
actually go ahead and analyze this. And so I think that's where, someone might have 5 followers and be the smartest person you've ever
definitely,
met. And
yeah,
so I maybe it's that egalitarian idea, like the Dr. King idea or something, content of character. Like, let's judge someone by the quality of what they're doing and by who they are, consistently, versus these other funny metrics that society tells us we ought to have. Like, it's like some Hollywood person is super famous, but that doesn't mean they know jack squat about the economy, and yet they're talking to me about the economy. It's like,
yeah.
you're not the source.
Yeah, no, that part is wild. It's like one of those KPIs that we use our followers, because we like to think. I personally, even I believe in the meritocracy. However,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
that's kind
not
of what I'm getting at.
perfect. Yeah,
Right.
just not perfect. And but you like to think, oh, this person has X amount of followers, they must know something. There's some sort of credibility there. You would like to think, but
Sure.
the truth is, it's just a message that people like, and
Yeah,
it
yeah,
doesn't
definitely.
necessarily mean
Well, or
credibility.
you
So
mentioned earlier, like, the thing about space calls. So that's something, like, I just partly maybe because I'm really busy, mentioned, I'm a family man, I've got a job, just a lot going on in my life, all the
yeah,
kids' sports and all that. So I haven't really over these couple years engaged in space calls as much. But I will say the few times that I've, say, gotten on one and had some things to say, you're right. Like, all of a sudden, boom, I'll pick up 20, 30, 40 followers or something. And so you could actually, and I don't, maybe I shouldn't be saying this because someone listening, people probably already know, but you can harvest followers. Like, there's ways to go create, I don't know, more followers. And it's just, that wasn't my game. And so, yeah, I don't know. You can even buy followers, right? So that's why it's just like that's to me not a measure of credibility. But you're absolutely right. We do that. Like it's kind of trained into us.
Well, we do need to. Unfortunately, like we do make quick decisions, and we kind of need to. There's a book called Blink by Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah,
Yeah, that shows quick decisions aren't always a bad thing.
true.
However, there are certain things that we're looking for that just might tip us off to yes or no, good or bad,
That's a good
green
point.
flag,
That's a
red
good point.
flag. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, that is one of those things because you would. I hope for myself if I am putting out a quality product, which well, I don't know how I do, but the people I have on, I know are quality. And I know that it's great. It's great conversations. It's great info just because I'm learning so much through this process and it's only been 30, 40 episodes. And so my hope is that people will find merit in this and I'll gain more followers and people will be able to look at that and think, oh, there must be something to this. Right. And so like at the same time, I even fall victim of that mindset with myself. And it is human nature. It, like you said, it's a double-edged sword. It's a double-edged sword. And unfortunately, it's one of those things where, like you said before, consistency. If you're consistent over time, my belief is that it will either be what builds you up or what destroys you. So there are people
Yeah,
that will
that's been
catch
my point of view. I've
fire.
always been like, well, the people who are supposed to hear me will hear me, and I'm not going to worry about
Hmm.
chasing after, I don't know, followers and whatever.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's the people that's supposed to hear me will hear me. Yeah, that's a great little saying. I like that a lot. We are here coming up on an hour, and I know you're a family man, and your
I've got
family's
a little
probably
more
getting up
time. We can
soon.
roll a little bit longer.
Awesome.
But I don't mind too. Like, yep, it is Sunday. We're going to take the family to church and all that stuff. So, but I've got some time still.
Awesome. Well, just because I want to make sure we touch this topic before you have to go, while we've been talking over the last couple of months, you've written a book, and I would love to hear more about this book.
Well,
If we want to talk about that for a little bit.
yeah, it's funny. And I mean, I full disclosure for your listeners, of course, I've told you about that before. And thanks for asking, though, too. And I guess it's funny because it's obviously nothing to do with AMC. It's something I had started even before this AMC journey. And it's my first book I've ever written. And so it's taken way longer than it should have ever taken. But maybe, I don't know, if there's other authors out there, maybe they'd tell me actually that's normal. I started this clear back in 2019, actually. And I guess, yeah, we're veering way off topic here, but I'll try to cover it quick. So for me, it was as an older, no, not older, but in my 40s, kind of realized I was carrying baggage, let's say, from having experienced parental absenteeism as a kid. Like when I was, I don't know, 2 or 3 years old, my dad moved out of the house. And then when I was like 7-ish, he moved out of the state. And so, he stayed in my life. And so I'll give him credit for that. But obviously, if you're seeing your own dad for a few weeks a year, it's not quite the same as growing up with someone in the house or anything like that. And I always thought I was okay. Like I'm a very kind of independent, like, I don't know, I got my mission, I've got my vision, I can do my thing, I'm okay. But then I kind of realized, actually, it's okay to not be okay. And I had some hurt still. And so I kind of went through some therapy for a while. And then through that process, kind of had journaled some things, just all kinds of memories, like remembering, okay, he never watched me play a game of basketball. Well, basketball was huge to me. I was one of those kids who thought I was going to make the NBA and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, but obviously that didn't pan out. But, so there were all these things in my life that I kind of came to realize, like, okay, it actually was kind of a big deal. And it's okay to pause a minute and say, that was a big deal. I told you the story about like how I didn't have any pajamas and someone had to buy me pajamas. My mom was so sick, she was laid up on the couch and couldn't watch me. And so I had to stay in someone else's house for a week. And then they got me pajamas. And I mean, some of these things are they're actually sort of big things. And so I had journaled all this and I thought, oh, I guess this would be kind of interesting. I wonder if I could publish this. And then realized through some research, like, no one's buying your memoirs if they don't have a clue who you are. So that was just not going to be commercial. Like it was going to be just for me, some vanity project. And so I said, okay. So I thought, well, I can fictionalize this as a story. And so there's a story I started working on that now is finally about to be published, hopefully soon, very soon, which is basically, I just tried to take that and turn it into a story of a family who kind of has generation after generation after generation of the men have this disappearing curse, which is what happened in my family. Like sometimes there's brokenness that just keeps getting passed on from one generation to the next. And that happened in my family. And so kind of turned that into, kind of a almost fantasy type of a thing. I don't want to give too many spoilers about the book. And so I've named the book Strong Like Wildflowers. And the idea is, how we talked about nice isn't soft. Well, there's something sort of related there, which is a wildflower will grow, under rock and dirt and snow, and has this amazing strength that it can still it'll keep reaching for the sun, and it'll grow past, like, shove rocks out of its way to kind of reach for the sun. And so there's just a phenomenal strength to the wildflower, but it's also this beautiful, soft, fragile thing that can be broken. And so it's both strong and soft. And I think in my life, I experienced that as, you build shells around yourself, you build walls because you don't want to let anybody else hurt you now, whether that's conscious or subconscious. And so that's been part of my journey, is learning, like, it's good to be strong. I'm glad I'm strong, but don't lose those soft parts of yourself. Like, don't lose what, can make you relatable to the world, and make you able to connect and help and encourage. And so, I mean, I won't maybe go on and on about that, but I guess just thanks for the opportunity to kind of tell you and tell others about that. And yeah, hopefully that will show up on Amazon, Kindle, and all that within like the next month or something. And I'll probably share about that. It'll be interesting because there's such a fine line in the AMC community. Someone even tried to come at me a couple days ago. There have been people, you mentioned scammers. There have been people who kind of used sort of the AMC ticker to try to grow a following and then sort of monetize that, and in many ways take advantage of this community. So people are I'll call it, allergic to that. And I do think I wrestled with this for a long time, like whether to share this, whether to end up telling people who I am, because I have this other account, this other life outside of AMC. And I did decide eventually to do that. And I think for me, this is back to the consistency over time, right? Like, I hope that people will see it's been 2.5 years of pouring in and giving of myself to this movement, that, we're all whole people, and I'm going to share this part of who I am and this journey I've had that started before AMC and will continue on after. And some people will probably think that looks like shilling or grifting, I'm out there selling a book or something. I'll be really honest with you, Troy. Like, I don't think this book will necessarily be very big, but I think it will help some people, other people who've dealt with what I've dealt with, and puts it into story, because there's a power of story. And through this fictional, hopefully fun also story, it's going to help some people identify and go, oh, I went through that too. And because the characters in this story, there's kind of an arc of healing and kind of finding their place and starting something new for future generations too. So yeah, I guess it'll be interesting once I decide to share that and maybe say, here's who I am, world. And there'll be some people who won't love that, I think, in the AMC community, but I'm hoping that they'll still ride with me and see over time, like, okay, he hasn't changed, he hasn't turned into a grifter, this is just a part of his life he's sharing with us.
Yeah, I think most people will,
That's my hope, and we'll see.
especially everyone that follows you and knows you as retail stock, but still knows you. I think most people will. Also, real quick, I just want to say it's the cycle that you were talking about of
Yeah,
the fatherlessness and the family kind of being generational. It's beautiful that you've broken that cycle.
thank you. Well,
That's a
I'll even
really
credit
cool
my
thing.
mom quite a bit too, because it's interesting. Both of my parents came from a lot of brokenness. And, like my mom, neither of her parents even ever said the words, I love you. Like, just imagine that. And she's from Germany. She had moved here to the States, followed my dad home, and then he left her. Right. So now here's just the two of us. But she's just this, like, speaking of strong like wildflowers, like, she's super strong, but for me decided to be soft and gave me something that she didn't get. Like, people didn't give her that, hugs and I love yous and stuff like that. So she, I think, was the beginning of breaking that cycle. And my faith, I mentioned we're going to go to church today. My faith
Hmm.
community surrounded us. Like, I know what it's like to have a mom who I heard her crying at night sometimes because we didn't have enough money for both food, in our bellies and gas for the car. And she had to decide, like, where's the money going the rest of the month? But we had a church community who came around us. People bought me clothes. People bought us a car, like, gave me rides to school, let me be in their house while she was working, before school. I got dropped off at someone's house every day. They would feed me breakfast. Like, I remember these people in my life now. And so that's when I was talking earlier about making small differences in our communities. Like, it was real for me. I grew up with that. But look now how others did that for me. And now it's like built into me, this whole pay it forward. And that's how you start making a change in the world. Like, people just fed me pancakes before school. Like, I'm sure at the time they weren't thinking they were changing the world, but they changed my world. And now I have a chance to do that for others. Man, I don't even remember why I said all that. You said something that, oh,
No, no,
breaking
you're just
cycles. Yeah. So
checking.
my mom kind of
Yeah.
did that. And then now, exactly, like, for me, I volunteered with Big Brothers Big Sisters for 5 years. I had you call it a little, like, I was a big, I had a little. Here was a guy his mom had 3 kids with 3 different men who all are currently in jail. So I mean, he's growing up in a tough circumstance, and I was like, people were there for me. Someone's got to be there for him. And it's just stuff like that. Like, now I coach youth sports because some of my coaches growing up in both basketball and running influenced my life and put positivity into my life. So now, okay, maybe I can do that for kids. And maybe that's just something I'd encourage your listeners. Like, we got to just remember that it might look small to kids, little things we can do, but it's not. It's when you invest into people's lives, they end up remembering that as adults, and it may change the trajectory of their life. So for me, it was my mom changed some cycles, but also my faith community kind of poured into, in many ways provided for and protected me. And then now here I am. Like, I've got 2 master's degrees. My mom doesn't even have a college degree. Things are different for me because people helped make them different. And I had to work my butt off too.
Of course. Yeah. No, that's always part of the formula, but it's very beautiful. But it's very beautiful. I love everything you're saying, but of course you have to work hard, but it's the opportunity is not there if the
Yes. It's got to be
village
both, I
isn't there.
think.
Yeah,
Yes,
it
I
really
had a village.
does.
That's absolutely right. That's
Yeah.
kind of what I mean. And I'll tell you, I've been on my own journey of like, I would have been someone, a few years ago who would have said the whole like, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. That's what I did. I worked my butt off. And if we want to get real deep here, and I'll probably, because I've been so apolitical, there'll be some people who will not love this, but I'm just going to say it. When we were having a lot of discussion in the country a couple of years ago during COVID around race relations and are there people who've been marginalized and left out of the system and all of that, I was a little bit offended at this notion of white privilege because I was like, man, like I said, I had hand-me-down clothes. We had to go to a free food bank. I know what it's like to not have. I didn't have, and I'm white. And I had that conversation with an African American friend, although he said, just call me black. And so out of respect for him, because that's what he said. So I had this conversation with a black friend, and he just looked me in the eye and he said, listen, everything you're saying can be true. You had a hard journey, but for you, if you worked your butt off, you were going to succeed. In general, the odds were with you. For some people, that's not true. They could have worked just as hard as you and not gotten to the same place as you. And it's a hard thing to wrestle with. Like, I had to kind of wrestle with that and go, okay, there are people who just the circumstances don't set up the same for them. And whether, like, I don't even want to get into arguing about, race and politics and all kinds of things. But instead, I can just say, I had to have an opening of my heart to say, there are some people who it's harder for them than for me. And what can I do about that? And do I want to do something about that? And do I want to at least see them and care that the situation is different for them than for me? Man, that was a left turn we just took. But
That's
anyway,
okay.
you kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I mean, there are so many factors,
Yeah.
and it's not something that comes down to.
It's not simple. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not simple.
And
Sometimes
life
it
is
comes down
not,
to,
I'm a
well,
big believer,
yeah,
life is not black and white, it's gray. And you got to live in the gray
exactly.
because, like, even everything we just talked about, there's part of it that probably is, look, whether you want to believe in the universe or God or dumb luck, I was blessed with a certain level of intelligence. Well, two people could work just as hard as each other. And if one person has certain skills that someone else doesn't have, they're not going to end up in the same place. So that's one. Then we talked about the village, right? Like, okay, I was blessed with a village that came around me and provided for me. And then there's just this idea of, do we all have the same opportunities or not? And all of those things make this like soup that comes together. Like, all the ingredients are in the soup. And so
Definitely.
I don't know. That's definitely a whole other conversation. I've read some
Yeah,
books on that. Like, why does
yeah,
one person make it and one person doesn't, and all that stuff.
yeah. I think anyone that there's just obvious facts. Obviously, you have to work hard, and I think anyone that denies that, like, obviously, you have to have some luck. I
Yeah,
personally,
yeah.
I mean, I'm just so lucky. It's one of the things that I'll touch on a lot. In fact, not a series that I'm going to promote, but it's going to be on my YouTube, the Golden Broberg series. I'm starting now. I have 3 older brothers, and like without them and my parents and even my step parents, like who knows where I'd be right now. And it's really the Golden Broberg series. I'm just going to be talking with them about what's going on with your life, and it's
Nice.
kind of a way for us to keep in touch and for us to, like, hey, when your kids are old enough, when all the kids are old enough, my oldest brother's 1 and the twins on the way, and I assume the rest of us at some point will have kids, but it's a way that, maybe they can, when they're old enough, whether it's 14 or 25, whatever it is, that they could look back and watch a couple of these and get to know their parents when they were younger. But like, if I didn't have them, again, who knows where I'd be? I got extremely, extremely lucky with the
Yeah.
household that I was just born
Yeah, you
into
don't
and the
get to
place I
choose
was
what you're
born
born
into.
into. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Right.
And even as you go on, like the hands you shake, you have at some point you have a tiny bit of control over that. And my oldest brother, he's a real estate guy in Omaha, Nebraska, and he did, go work his ass off to shake all the hands he could possibly shake and introduce himself to everyone he could possibly introduce himself to in the real estate community in Omaha. So I don't want to say I don't want to say that part's all luck, but there's obviously some luck to the hands that you shake. And yeah, it's just, and the amount of factors there are. I mean, not just even the race and socioeconomic status you're born into, but the country you're born into and
Mm.
the city you're born into. And there's just so many different factors that the goal in my mind should be equality of opportunity, which is an
Mhm,
impossible
mhm.
goal as it is, but we should
Yeah.
constantly fight to help make that happen. And as you were saying, in your case as a child, the way that people are able to help give you closer to an equal opportunity as the people around you and as the average person in this country is, help, feed you pancakes in the morning, get you a pair of pajamas. Like, there's the little things that we can do. And I hope
Yeah.
this podcast is one of those little things, and I can always do more, but the little things that we can do to help uplift one another and help spread good messages and take care of each other. And I love the mindset you have. I love the giving back, and a very beautiful story. I didn't know. I know what we've been saying to anyone's listening that we have been talking on DMs on Twitter for a while now, but I didn't know this story of yours actually.
Well, there's
It's
just, there's
very,
a lot of parts of it, like maybe if I tease one
yeah.
or two things, it's when I was 5, for example, I got on a plane. I've shared this, I've worded it badly on Twitter a few times and people tease me because I say, like, when I was 5, I flew by myself to Alaska. And so people tease me like, wait, you were
Well.
flying a plane no, I wasn't flying a plane. I got on a commercial flight as a 5-year-old that my mom had to release me, like, I mean, she's religious, so she's like, God, please take care of my little boy. But my dad
Mhm.
was up in Alaska, and he was doing. So I went and lived with him for a summer when I was 5, and there's some of that's like in the book too, some adventures, and actually, there's quite a bit of it. Like, we lived in this stone hut for the summer because he was doing this project, building a road. He's an engineer, so he's overseeing this project. But so there's just all these adventures in life you have, and sometimes I look back and at the time that didn't. I don't know. Things didn't seem weird or different to me, but now I look back and I'm like, man, I can't imagine putting a 5-year-old on a plane to fly to Alaska by themselves. That was crazy that I did that. So there's just stuff like that I've kind of, like I said, I worked it kind of into this fictional telling. But I guess the point is too, we all have a story, and when we think that through, and for me, it's to your point, you don't know what country you're gonna, or you can't decide what country you're gonna be born into, what family you're gonna be born into, a lot of different things like that. But what you can decide, like I talk to my daughter all the time because she's in sports too, and I say there's two things you can control, and there's this. Actually, even let me go back before I share that. I ran in college. That was part of like I didn't get to choose that. I had the genetics that I could run fast, but I worked really hard too, right? Like, I was a distance runner. There's a lot of work implied behind that.
Mhm.
Well, because I could run, I got a little bit of grant money I was at a non-scholarship school, like a D3. So I was no star. I ran at a D3 level. But anyway, so they gave me some grant money, and that helped me be able to go to school. My coach, though, used to talk about, because you get really nervous before a race, at least I would, like, what pain you're about to go through, and it really sucks. And so it kind of, you get nervous, but you're also thinking about these times you want to hit. And my coach would say, you actually need to stop thinking about the time you want to hit, because this idea of like a result or performing is what's making you nervous. What you need to just do is go to the starting line and just know that you're going to give your best effort. And if you can control your effort, and so I tell my daughter that all the time now, because she has some kind of sports anxiety, but she's really talented, but she gets anxious. And I just say there's two things you can control: it's attitude and effort. And the reason I bring that up here and what we were just talking about, like, you're right, you can't choose where you are. Sometimes circumstances are tough. Like, even in my life, the last year and a half, there's been a lot of surprise expenses, or both for my in-laws. There's been some health stuff, even something like breaking my own tooth. Just stuff happens, and so it's like, what are you going to do with it now? You can't choose what's happened to you, but you can choose your response. which actually, by the way, if your listeners go see my pen tweet, there's a whole thing in that about there's a guy, because of where I worked, I got to see this guy who was like the trainer to the stars. Like he was LeBron's trainer, Tiger Woods trainer,
Oh
Serena
wow.
Williams trainer. And I got to hear him speak one time in a room there were just like 20 of us. So we could actually kind of talk to him and ask him questions and stuff. And he said through the years, so here I am rambling again, but through the years, all these, we're talking LeBron, Tiger, Serena, the athletes, Russell Wilson. He said he noticed there's 100% correlation. There's a I don't know what to call it, something that's true about every single one of them. He said without fail, every single one. They have this internal monologue where they say, "So what? Now what?" And you can kind of see that in my pinned tweet. It's it's like a thread and it's in there somewhere about this idea of so what, now what. There's not a single successful person who hasn't experienced some kind of failure or some kind of hiccup or some kind of hurdle. We all have that. But some people hit the hurdle or the roadblock and they go, well, crap, I'm out. Some people hit the hurdle or the roadblock and they go, so what? Now what? What am I going to do with this? You mentioned you talked to Jay Brown. I told him once, because I see him using this word forward a lot. And actually that's a concept I use a lot too. Like, put your eyes forward. Don't put your eyes on the past or even sometimes the present. Okay, this thing happened to you. Like, just something as simple as during COVID, my furnace broke and I had to figure out, okay, where am I coming up with $7,000 to fix a furnace? But what are you going to, it happened. You are going to need to deal with this. So what are you doing going forward? And by the way, that's the same with stocks, like this idea of sunk cost. If something doesn't go the way you wanted it to go, well, that was a decision you made in the past, but what's the best decision from now forward? And so this idea of so what, now what, we can control attitude and effort. I don't know. That was maybe a little bit of preaching there, but you're
No, I
getting some
love it.
personal philosophy.
No, I love it. I love the philosophy. I love the personal philosophies. Again, I get to learn a lot doing this, and I get to. Everyone's story is so unique and so interesting, and you can learn so much just through a conversation, and I love it.
Well, what comes out is
Actually,
it's just what I wish I could gift to people. Like, I honestly wish I could give this as a gift in terms of you're going to experience things that you don't like. Things are going to not go how you want them to go. Nobody has a perfect life, or at least I haven't met the person who has. I was talking about my mom, like her life was a lot harder than mine even, but she kept going forward. It's like that whole idea, like maybe some Chinese proverb, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. Like,
mhm.
just what's the next right step? Something went wrong, or even you made a mistake. What's the next little even baby step you can take to just create forward progress? And that's kind of my philosophy. And frankly, why I'm still in this AMC play. Like, it's been rough. It's been sometimes frustrating. It should have happened by now. There's cheaters, there's manipulators. That's not fun to deal with. But I'm going to keep putting my coach in college would call it, put the back foot in front. Like, all right, I'm going to pick that foot up and put it forward. Now I'm going to pick the next foot up and put it forward. And I'm just going to keep going forward and grind this out. By the way, just a heads up, I probably have to leave in like about 8 to 10 minutes, but I know we maybe are about wrapped up anyway. Your
That's
listeners are probably
okay.
getting tired of my voice by now.
No, well, if they are, I'm not. But there is a tweet of yours, as I think it's kind of wraps up this conversation in a good way too. I quote tweeted. I'm actually going to share my screen for anyone that's watching on YouTube versus just listening. I had it pulled up before we even started.
There,
There we
it's
go.
coming up. I see it.
And this tweet of yours, simple. Do you believe AMC is shorted to the point it's a risk for shorts if AMC proves to be profitable? If yes, buy and hold. If no, walk away. Arguing other things is a waste of time and energy. I believe that the thesis and the data, so I'm long. Hashtag apes not leaving. And my comment was retail stock has a way of making the complex simple.
Oh, I saw you do
And
that. Thank you. That's nice of you.
yeah, no, it's very true. Like honestly, throughout this whole conversation, even and everyone that's looking at this through YouTube, you should give him a follow. Here's the pin tweet you were talking about.
Yeah, there's
Um,
Angela Duckworth talking about grit too.
yeah, and actually, I read the book Grit. Good book, very good book. I think
Well,
reading
by the way, I mean,
Grit
so that even
and
ties to
Range.
strong like wildflowers. That's the point. It's grit. It's something about just not quitting and keeping on going and reaching for the sun. But sorry, you were
No,
saying.
you're good. You're good. No, I love it. I love it. I'll say I think the book. If you read Grit and then you read the book Range, and I'm forgetting the author of Range, but they're good antithesis to one another, and they're both really strong, good messages about finding your way. and just to keep going. And they both give good real life examples in those books. But anyway, it is a great account to follow, and the way that you are able throughout this conversation on your Twitter, on YouTube, you're able to take these seemingly complex ideas and just break them down in a very simple way where like even that kids can understand, even if you really want to sit there and talk about it and learn about it. It's a very impressive skill, and it's not something everyone can do. It is really truly a difficult thing to do, and you really have a talent for it.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know
I
if you
think in
knew
my
that
heart, I'm
before
kind of
this,
like
but
a coach or a teacher. So maybe that's where it comes from.
it makes
That's what
sense.
I'd mentioned coaching youth sports. I think I've coached I've lost count actually, like 30 plus teams over the years. I just like teaching things. Yeah, it's funny
Good.
you mentioned that. And I know I was kind of like even starting to tell you before we were recording, like the way those words you used, it's interesting when you see themes in your life, because it was no less than I told you, and I'll just tell your listeners, like the COO of that Dow Jones company told me that once. Actually, he told our administrative assistant. Had to present to this like steering committee because we were spending like $100 million on this project over a course of like 5 years. And so it was this huge project, and I was like the business lead for it. And we would have to present to the steering committee, once a month and give them updates and let them guide us and all that and make decisions. And he told our admin assistant, like, oh, we really like this guy. And so I emailed him once and said, why did you say that? What is it you're seeing that you like? And he said exactly, like almost word for word, what you just said. Like he said, well, we're this big company and things are really complicated. And you just have a way of making complicated things really simple, but explaining it in like positive ways too. And that's just a good thing. So I don't know. I guess I try to lean in. We each have our strengths, right? So I don't know. Thanks for saying that. And maybe that's one of mine. I don't know. I feel a little embarrassed. So maybe that's why I'm saying I don't know a lot. But yeah, I try to lean in on just explaining things because, in finance, there's so many people. I've seen so many apes who are like, oh, this is my first time in something like this, or maybe they don't know things about finance or whatever. And I want to demystify it a little bit if I can and just explain some things. But on some of it too, it's like, is a company bringing in enough cash or not? Like, and that's where, for me, the AMC piece was, there were all these messages about AMC going bankrupt. And I was like, no, they're bringing enough cash. I can just do the math and I can show you the math. So that was part of my voice in this journey too.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm glad you've heard that before, because it's very true. And it's a huge, huge talent. And it's a very cool thing to have. I know we need to wrap up here very quickly. So I'll very quickly ask a couple of questions here.
Yeah,
How I
sure.
wrap up every episode. One, do you have any, other than your own book, which I will be buying and reading, but other than your own book, do you have any recommendations of books that you love that maybe were paradigm shifters for you?
Man. Well, on a personal level, let me actually look this up because I always say the name of this one wrong. I think it's To Own a Dragon, but To Own a Dragon by Donald Miller. That's going to be more for people, like I said, who kind of maybe dealt with parental absenteeism or just want to see someone's story told well. He's the guy who kind of does, is it Smooth Like Jazz or something like that too? So he's a far better writer than I. And so that was just something that really impacted me. When I said I was having all these memories of like, oh, my dad wasn't there for this thing or my dad wasn't there for that thing. He just writes this kind of in a fun storytelling way, his experience of ending up having a father figure in his life who kind of guided him and stuff. And so it's kind of a cool thing. So it's sort of like real, but it's also, he has a storyteller way of talking. Gosh, I'm kind of more of a nonfiction. Been so busy, I haven't read as much lately. Trying to think I guess that was actually nonfiction I shared, but kind of drawing a blank at the moment.
That's
I
okay.
did, I mentioned I got those 2 masters. That was like tons of really boring reading. So, yeah, I mentioned, well, like you brought up Gladwell. There's some of his stuff that's fun because he kind of shares it in sort of a pop culture way of, I mean, you talk about making something simple. That guy's kind of
Yeah, no,
genius
he's
level.
incredible. Yeah.
It's, he kind of distills things into almost, like I said, pop culture. You could kind of just look through it. Oh, I know one. There's The Power of Habit. I don't know if you ever heard of that one. Like just this idea of we have these patterns. It's, I'm trying to remember. I often don't remember people's names. Charles Duhigg. See, and I hadn't remembered his name, but that was one that was impactful to me a while back of just, we fall into these patterns that kind of drive our whole life. And so how do you become aware of those patterns and consider breaking them or doing things that will sort of refine your patterns into kind of moving your life in a direction you want to go?
I think I have read that one. I'm trying to think. There's so many books that have the word habit in the title. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure was Tony Dungy talked about in that one?
Ah, boy,
The
it's actually been
Buccaneers.
years since I've read it, to be honest.
I'm trying to think, but I'll definitely look into it. And then my last question, and I feel like I might know your answer based on this conversation, but in your opinion, what is the meaning of life?
Hmm. So I'm gonna get all touchy feely here, and it's just hopefully it comes across that I'm pretty respectful to people who would have a different point of view, and that's fine. But you asked me, so I'll give you my answer. This notion that light overcomes darkness, and to me that means things like love, dignity, honor, respect, kindness, compassion, empathy, seeing each other. I think a lot of the brokenness in our world, and so maybe that would be if I distilled like what I think the meaning of life is, it's kind of brokenness versus healing. There is a brokenness in our world. I think we can kind of all agree on that, right? Like there's just stuff that doesn't feel right, doesn't look right, and it hurts people. And so, am I an agent of healing or am I an agent of brokenness? And there, I don't even have to agree with you or anybody else on faith and is there one true faith or whatever. It's there's brokenness and I want to be part of promoting healing. And that even gets into issues of like greed and power and money. Like I think a lot of that brokenness comes from self-seeking behaviors. And I seek self at the cost of others. And so how do we get to a place of actually I need to keep in mind your good and your benefit and not just mine. And I'm not going to seek my good and my benefit at the expense of you. And I'm not saying I always get that right. Like I happen to believe it's like innate. It's inside of us to like I've raised 3 kids. One of the first words they learn is mine. Like they want to grab the
Mm-hmm.
thing, they don't want to share, they have to be taught to share. And so there's this thing for all of us, and maybe it's scarcity mentality too. Like if you don't want to be sort of faith-based and maybe you want to believe it's evolutionary based, whatever, like survival of cavemen, I need to grab that piece of meat for me and mine and make sure that my clan survives or whatever. And I just think we're
Mm-hmm.
at a place where we don't have to be that way. There is enough for everybody, but we still sometimes have this scarcity mentality and I'm going to get mine versus, you know what, somebody else needs something. I tell my kids all the time, like I have all these sayings. In fact, we have this, I'll send it to you offline because it has our name in it, but it's a list of things that I just always say. And we actually, my wife like had them printed up real nice and we have it framed up on the wall. So it's like the things that my family, it's like our creed or something. One of the things is I'll make it up and just call us the Smiths. So Smiths don't say no fair. And one of the things is like, I tell them, you're allowed to say no fair, but you're only allowed to say no fair if someone else doesn't have enough of what they need. That's not fair. But if it's, just you want something more, we don't say no fair in this house. And just this concept of, I want to notice when someone else doesn't have enough food on their table, or I want to notice when someone else doesn't have the clothes they need, or someone else isn't given that opportunity. You were talking about that, equality of opportunity. That's not right. That's not fair. How can I change that? Boy, let me bring it all the way back. You said the meaning of life, ultimately love. Like I happen to believe that, there is a God who loves me and loves you. And that the only way to realize real healing in this world is to sort of release sort of seeking power and hurting others and just step into what that love looks like.
That's a beautiful message. The whole thing, and the synopsis of it. On that
Oh,
note,
thank you.
I've loved our time together. I really have. This has been a fantastic conversation. I will let you gather your family and head to church on this Sunday. But again, I really appreciate your time. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you, and now I'm looking
Well, let me
forward to
flip
the
that back to
book.
you
And
for 1 minute,
yeah,
just before we
yeah.
close,
Oh,
too.
oh,
And of
please.
course, it's yours. It's your space. You have the last word. But I just want to say, speaking of people who need to hear you, will hear you. Whether you get 10 listeners or 10 million, I just love that you clearly have your own positive energy. Like it just comes through. It's cool. I've heard you on Space Calls. I've talked to you here this morning, seen you on Twitter. The vision you have for what you want to do, I hope that it becomes big because the world could use that. But even if it doesn't, I just want you to know, like, it's an encouragement even to me. Like just talking to you today, feeling your positive energy, just the vibe that you've got, the energy you're bringing to, like, to a, maybe if I could call myself an older brother, hopefully I'm not quite old enough to be your dad, but to a guy who came before you, looking back at you now and seeing your energy, it kind of inspires and motivates me too. So just keep at it. Like, you're going to have an impact even just with your energy. And I just want to tell you that it comes through, and I appreciate it and I respect it.
Thank you. That means a lot. That really does mean a lot. I very, very much appreciate it. Yeah, who knows what this will or won't be. For me personally, though, it has been a blessing. There's one of my episodes is with the founder of Dude Fridges, who's actually a friend of mine. It's a meme account. So I do like
Okay.
to talk to the meme accounts. I think it's a good part of Twitter.
Yeah.
I think the study of mnemonics, it's a book called The Ape That Understood the Universe. And it's in Charles Darwin's Selfish Gene book. So mnemonics is kind of the study of how culture grows, and a meme is a unit of culture. We think of memes as, pictures and whatever, but a meme is a unit of culture that human beings spread between one another. And anywho, I think it's a really cool part of Twitter, and I think it's a cool part of how humans interact with one another and how information can spread and all of that. But I was talking with him, and I was like, my dream is definitely, if I can do this full time and just keep, all that stuff. But the more we got into that conversation, he kind of made me realize, like, as he was talking about, he does this because he loves it. He wants to be funny and bring positive energy. And, it was never really an idea of, he thought it was $1 million idea and $1 million idea, but it was never really about that per se. And it kind of just helped me realize in the middle of that conversation, it's like, I really am living my dream here. Like, God forbid you get hit by a car tomorrow, and tomorrow's never promised. Like, this is something that I can say, hey, I was able to spend my time personally and here professionally, and like doing what I wanted to do and getting to talk to these awesome, interesting people that I believe are doing great things. And it's something I hope to do for the rest of my life, and definitely already am living that dream. And obviously, the bigger the followers and the bigger the platform, the more people I can talk to, and hopefully the more people we can inspire. That's really the reason behind it. But the reason behind, like, sometimes I definitely get stressed about the growth, but that conversations like this really do help me realize, like, oh yeah, that's not what it's about. And I'm very thankful for this. I mean, like, for this conversation, and just the ability and that might not be the right word here. The fact that other people can see the vision that I have here. And and it means a lot. That statement means a lot to me, and I appreciate you. Thank you so much, really.
Yeah. All right. Well, it was awesome. Thank you for having me on, and I'll look forward to hearing us back, because I don't even remember everything we talked about anymore.
Yeah, no, it's crazy how that happens. It really is. Like, every time I listen back to it, I'm like, oh yeah, no, I forgot about that part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thanks. See ya.